presenters. Cesar Quiroga, is that pronounced?
You did wonderful.
Cesar Quiroga from Texas A&M, whoop, Transportation Institute, class of '83. And James Ensbach, who's with Cardno, and he's on ASCE, you're on the ASCE Utility Committee, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're just gonna, what we're gonna do is we got two presenters. I figure, each one gets a half an hour to give their presentation. This would provide a lot of time, and that at least still leaves us half an hour or more if you decide to finish up early for a question and answer. We could have an ad hoc panel session, because what I've seen out of conferences is spend all this time and money to come to a conference. Do you really want to sit there and have people pontificate to you? I know I don't, even though I've been guilty of standing up and pontificating. So anyways, so it's just kind of turn it interactive, and we end up, you ask the questions that you think none of us want to answer, right? Those, like Dr. Phil, it's like you ask the questions that the person doesn't want to answer, and that's how they get to the root of the thing. And so maybe part of that here is in these issues we're all wrestling with is to, ask those prickly questions and get to the root of it. So with that, let's not take up any more time, and we'll just go ahead and start with the speakers and get into it.
All right. Thanks, Andy. All right. My name is Cesar Quiroga, and I think you did wonderful. Well, thanks again. So I know my name is kind of tough. So
I'm from Texas, so I speak Spanglish.
Yes, actually, I noticed that before going to Texas, I used to live in Louisiana, and that's when you saw all kinds of very creative ways to pronounce it. But then I moved to San Antonio, and I noticed that more people were actually able to half pronounce it, so that's very good. You did very well. So anyway, utility installations, right? This morning there was a presentation by Chris Johnson, as I recall, who mentioned utilities, and this is an area in which people have expressed a lot of interest, knowing how to develop tools to better manage utilities, and we know why. There are three reasons that are frequently mentioned as to reasons for delays and cost overruns in transportation projects. Three top reasons. Do you know what those reasons are?
Utilities.
One. Right away. Number two. Number three. In no particular order, the environmental process. So you talk to people, depending on the survey and depending on who answers the survey, they will tell you right away, they will say utility, but those are the top three reasons. Recently I read a report on risk management, and again, the top three reasons for causes of delay and of course risk is utilities. So anyway, I think I maybe should go to the let me start with a high-level view, because one of the purpose of this meeting is big data, right? So let me begin with a high-level view, just to provide a reality check. Everybody knows there are approximately 4 million miles of roads in the U.S. Perhaps Google knows much better than anybody else how many miles of roads we have. Freight railroads, 140,000, 25,000 miles of navigable water. I didn't know that there were 20,000 airports in the U.S., of which 5,000 are public use. I didn't know that either, so I looked it up and I found it. 500,000 miles of electric transmission lines and 2.3 million miles of pipelines. This is what people normally consider part of the transportation system, when they're talking about the big stuff. But here's a reality check. Let's look at underground facilities for a second. Tunnels and structure foundations, right? That's one. IPS and other agency-owned infrastructure. 1 million miles of water pipes, 600,000 miles of sanitary sewer. And look at this one. 19 million miles of fiber optic cable added each year. And I didn't believe when I first read it, but I looked it up, and yes, it's between 5 and 10, 15 million miles. Now, not all of that goes underground. So that's something to keep in mind, but it's a significant amount. Jim is going to mention another statistic: 35 million miles of utilities, right? underground.
that we know about.
Exactly. But notice that if this number is true, and I still don't know if it is true, you probably need to revise that number every year, right?
Well, and with fracking operations, we're getting an additional 50,000 miles of underground pipeline just in Pennsylvania alone.
Right. So
Each year.
it's just, and of course, you know, all the electric and telephone distribution lines, and I figure that those must be included in the 35 million number that we have. Now, I will be very brief on the next couple of slides because Jim is going to mention big data. These keywords come from a definition that IBM has put together, talking about volume, variety, veracity. Those are keywords, and of course volume, I just mentioned those big numbers. Variety, and for underground installations, particularly in the case of utilities, we have a wide range of spatial data models and database. That's a reality we have to deal with. Also, not just spatial data, but also non-spatial data. But here's a reality, is that most assets are depicted using 1D, in many cases linear referencing, or 2D, but very little is done in a 3D environment. In terms of velocity, and this is an interesting observation, everybody knows, we are increasingly using all these great technologies, Google Maps, Google Earth, LIDAR, and all that. But remember, garbage in, garbage out is the issue of veracity, which also has to do with big data. One of the key issues in the case of utilities is what are the impacts of not having accurate information. And remember the top 3 reasons for project delays and cost overruns? Utilities are mentioned there because of that. Okay. Of course, we know, 1D models are useful for many applications, but not necessarily for asset management. And in the case of most of station projects, the 2D models that we normally use for utilities don't account for safety information. And as-builts, of course, are useful as a general reference, but not as a reliable data source. So, if we're going to transition to big data, in the case of utility installations, there are a number of things that we need to do as a community. Develop spatial data standards, and I don't know, Jim, if you're going to mention standards, but I think Jim mentioned that this
Very
morning.
briefly.
He mentioned the ASCE standard, developing standards for non-spatial data as well. But I think at the end of the day, what we need to do is make sure that we have good records after projects are built, and how do we do that, right? And a lot of people argue that the best way to capture information about utilities is when the trench is still open, when the utilities are being installed. That's the best time to capture that information. So there is a big need for 3D utility information. I think I'm making that case. I mentioned the survey, and one of several surveys, this one in 2002, highlighted that utility location was the most frequent reason for delays. Now, spring forward a few years, there was a joint committee that provided recommendations to FHWA on ways to accelerate highway construction. And there was a letter, and this letter basically had this information. And this is coming from the construction industry. Contractors were telling FHWA that one of the things that they noticed when they had to deal with and the sources for inefficiency was utilities that had not been relocated, or they were relocated, they didn't know where they were, etc. And so they highlighted a number of things that had to happen. They said timely and accurate marking and or relocation of utilities prior to the start of construction is an important step. That's one. They also mentioned developing standards. So those are key requirements that the construction industry has identified. So, there's been some research in recent years, and I'm just going to mention briefly a couple. From the SHARP2 program, we have R01A, which was supposed to develop a 3D framework for the inventory and management of utilities. Also B and C, which have to do with the identification and location of deep utilities in general and other methodologies. I'm not going to touch on that. There was another series, which was the 15 series B and C, which developed a utility conflict matrix approach and process to manage utilities. 15C is active. We are actually working on it, conducting trial implementation. Leave it at that. There's been also some research at the state level. Just a couple of samples here. Texas completed a couple of research and implementation projects. Florida DOT also completed one on the feasibility of combining feasibility of using CAD information to develop GIS-based inventories of utilities, but nothing on 3D. The last bullet that I have here is really the subject matter of my presentation, which is a project funded by FHWA looking at the feasibility and marking of underground utilities. So this project, what are the purpose of that? In looking at the Sharp 201A project, there were several issues with the research. I'm not going to get into that. They put together this scope of work that basically asked for an answer to the following questions. Is there any way to determine what is the cost to collect and maintain utility data with the focus on 3D? What is the cost to use RFID technologies to mark utilities? And I'm pretty sure that the motivation for this was their knowledge of a pilot implementation in Virginia, which I'm going to get into in a few minutes. Barriers for collecting utility information and recommendations to address those barriers. And remember, all of this is in relation to 3D data. What are the benefits of collecting accurate utility data when project development and delivery? And we knew going in, this is a tough one, because there is no data. So what we decided to do was to focus on the opposite question, which is the cost of not having accurate data. And for that, you do have some information in the form of change orders, claims, and so on. Still not perfect, but it's better than nothing. And finally, this one, which is a tough one to answer, is willingness to have state DOTs at the central repository of utility information for the right of way. So there are some examples. This one is from Seattle. As I recall, Jim, correct me here if I'm wrong. This was really for visualization purposes, right?
Correct.
This was really not the result of a 3D investigation, or maybe 2D.
Well, we did 2D investigation very thoroughly, and a few thousand spot locations for the Z data, but everything in between those spot locations was a best guess.
Okay, and this is the result of
And that's
that.
the result.
The result of that. So remember, garbage in, garbage out. Unless you characterize the uncertainty associated with those utilities, that's something to do with visualization. This is a pretty picture, but there is data behind it. And if you use this product as part of the workflow for design, you have to understand those uncertainties. This is the result of a tool, which is GPR in this case, using a GPR array that enables the characterization, actually the identification of certain spots where there might be utilities. Let me put it this way. It requires a lot of interpretation. You see some of these elements right here, which kind of point to the probability of utility installations that might be there. It requires a lot of interpretation. And then this is the next phase. You conduct a very serious, thorough utility investigation using a variety of tools, and depending on the workflow, then you develop these 3 tools. In this case, it's not just visualization. This one was really the result of converting all that set of data points, and the result is this. Here's another one. This is in Ireland, by the way. LIDAR, I shouldn't forget this. Of course, you can't use LIDAR for underground, but there have been some applications trying to use this to characterize above ground installation. So, in terms of what we need to do for this project, we are halfway through it. We submitted a first report almost a year ago, and we are actually right now working on task C. And I will talk about that in a second. It basically involves talking to a number of state DOTs to gather information about what they're doing. We surveyed last year, we surveyed all 50 states, and most of them responded. And the ones that you see marked with an arrow provided answers that, in our opinion, were interesting. For example, in the case of California, we learned that they were using 3D for visualization mainly, but nothing utility. You rarely see anything related to utility, but we're trying to capture practices from what we call traditional 3D, if we can say that. But the idea was to try to learn some lessons from that, and then try to project it to the case of building 3D models for utilities. In the case of Connecticut, we learned they have developed guidelines for the use of 3D in projects. In Florida, there is an active project right now dealing with the use of radar tomography, and I'll touch base on that for a second. In Iowa, everybody was talking about Iowa and the fact that they were at the forefront of using 3D for automated machine guidance. And so we actually traveled to Iowa to learn what the practice was about and learn some lessons from that. In case of Michigan, we learned that they are using LIDAR, and more importantly, they are developing linear features. They're extracting linear features from the LIDAR product. In the case of North Carolina, they're beginning to use 3D a little bit to visualize utilities, but mainly for public outreach applications, not design. Some RFID already standard at the local level. We know from Texas, wide use of 3D for project design. We still need to interview them to actually learn the extent to which they're using it. And then in Virginia is the use of RFID for utility monitoring and inventory, and I'll touch base on that as well. In Washington State, there's also 3D for visualization. You already saw the examples here. North Carolina, this is an application that they shared with us. Of course, traditional 3D characterization of the project. You notice here a drainage structure, and then here the facilities, the utilities. In this case, what they did was to take the plan view and cross-section and profile information to develop this 3D characterization of the utility information. That's all they used it for. And that seems to be kind of the typical application. This is what we saw in Iowa. In the mid-2000s, they met with a sample of contractors, and this is what they saw. And this is sort of the traditional practice when it comes to the development of 3D models, right? You have all these products that are used for the design phase. The DOT generates a series of 2D files, and then the contractor generates a 3D model, which is used for automated machine guidance. And so in the mid-2000s, Iowa said, okay, what can we do to help you, the contractors, develop a better workflow? And this is what the contractors say. You know, this is what I would like to get from the Iowa DOT, is something that would enable us to develop a 3D model faster. And they decided, okay, yeah, we can do it. And so Iowa basically has switched its own workflow, and they do 3D design from scratch, from the very beginning. In our conversations with them last month, we also learned that they have begun to use 3D for preliminary engineering design, which is fantastic. So they are moving in this direction. We also asked the question, how much does it cost to develop 3D models? And guess what? Their answer was, we don't know. The answer, and the reason is very simple, is because 3D is now an integral part of their workflow, and so for them it's really not an issue, right? And that was an interesting observation. One of the things we learned from Iowa was that even though they are designing in 3D, not everything is designed in 3D. And so this is the current state of the practice in Iowa. And if you notice, this is, of course, the characterization in 3D of the project, except that on occasion we saw these gaps right here, you know, and we were wondering, you know, what is that? Well, it turns out that those are spaces for drainage structures, but they don't design in 3D yet. And one of the reasons is that their drainage design is still handled by a different division, and that design is still done, you know, the traditional way, plan view, cross-section, profiles, and so on. And they only develop, the design section or division only develop 3D models if there is a need for it. So in the mid-2000s, the contractor said, you know, we would like to get 3D models, but we don't care about the drainage structures. You know, they are local features. Let's try to maximize the benefit, and let's maximize the product to diminish cost. And how did they do that? Well, by getting 3D information throughout, except for those local conditions. But when they do have to do that, for example, for public outreach, then they convert that information into 3D, but it's not for design. We asked the question, how about utilities? And they don't design 3D for utilities yet. Now, one of the reasons I'm guessing, they seem to confirm that, was that most of their projects are rural. I'm guessing that as the number of projects become, the number of projects in urban areas increase, there is a chance that they will increase the use of 3D tools for design, etc. Okay, so that was Iowa. Let me switch gears to Florida, the radar tomography project. And in this case, Cardinal TVE, which is the contractor who's doing the work, had a subcontractor, and this is one of the passes using GPR. I believe this is at about, how deep this is? 6 feet maybe? No, 10 feet. Maybe a couple feet. I think it's a couple feet down.
I think they 4 or 5 feet was about the max.
Yeah, wouldn't this be the depth, the layer?
Yeah,
Couple
yeah,
feet
that
up.
particular layer is a hack of.
I think that's probably what it is.
Right.
And so, but you can see these red lines that suggest the, location of underground utilities. The original objective of this project, as I understand it, was to try to identify the feasibility of using radar as the main tool to characterize underground utilities. What they learned in the process was that GPR is a great tool, but only is one of many tools. And I think that's perhaps the best way to characterize it.
Yeah, especially in Florida that has great sandy soil, where you will get the best radar image of anywhere in the country. It was still only effective, less than 40% of the existing utilities could be imaged by radar. So when you go to other places where the soils aren't as conducive, you're gonna get results that are even less than that. It's not the panacea that we would like it to be yet.
But it is,
But
it is a
great
tool, and I think that an important lesson is that you should use, all this, it's just like any designer, you're not gonna use just one tool to design your project. You use whatever tools are needed, and this is one of them. The end result is something like this, and there are some views that, you can move things around, but this is really the characterization of the underground installations. And then the output of this was transmitted to the DOT, which in turn gave it to the designers. So that's what it is. So, Virginia. In Virginia, there was a very different application which involves the use of these ball markers. There is an RFID chip inside. They are probably about, 4 or 5 inches in diameter, and the idea is that they are dropped when the trench is still active. And this is the main model they're using. Now, that's not the only model in the market. You also have this other model right here, but there are a few other applications in Europe which are slightly different. And this is very much the way it works. So when the trench is still open, you deploy these, you see some green dots right here that are ready to be dropped into the trench at about maybe 4 or 5 feet. And because they are RFID, you can program them. Each RFID has an ID, and then you tie that to a relational database or some sort of database to keep that information. So here is another view, and you can see the location of these at regular intervals. I think it's 25 feet. Here's another view. And this is one of the end results. And so in Virginia, it's in northern this district more precisely, the original intent of this implementation was to serve as a tool for damage prevention. They figure that if they had one of these ball markers, and then with the construction equipment having a sensor, you can then detect if there is a utility nearby or in close proximity. And that was very good, except that they noticed that when they completed the information workflow by developing this type of applications and by posting this information on a secure website that can be accessed through a login ID and password authentication, they completed the cycle. Because now they can use this for asset management. And notice that you can have, this is the basic characterization of some of these, and depending on the type of RFID marker they're using, the data dictionary changes slightly. I don't remember right now how many variations of attributes they have, but it's quite substantial. Probably like maybe 15 to 20.
22, I think.
Something along those lines. But it doesn't stop there. They also have as-bills. And they're as-bills, which in Virginia, like many state DOTs, the as-bills, the official product, the official record now, it is a PDF. So the PDFs include locations associated with the RFIDs, and they are clickable. So in the PDF, you click on the RFID, and this is the information you get. So the RFID file, the PDF file is very similar to this product right here, except that it is in PDF format. But then they can disseminate to authorized users, like utility companies or whomever. They also keep information about these installations on cross sections every 25 feet. And so you can imagine they have information both on plan view and they have information on cross sections. And the way they set it, they don't have information about utilities in 3D. This is their version of 3D, and you could actually build a 3D model from this kind of information. They have way, and this is interesting. This is the location of the marker according to the GPS coordinate, and this is where the location was marked according to the one call service. And you can see here the offset was about what, 6 feet, roughly speaking. And so they were able to actually improve the quality of the information provided by the one call system. Something similar happened here. And so it's not just for damage prevention, but certainly in this case you could argue that, yeah, it could have been used for that.